go ahead, Erica.
I just wanted to start by framing this session as judging as an inequitable process in itself, in that many of us as judges are not from the community of our students, and we're not experts in the content area that many of the students are working on. We also carry different identities and backgrounds and educational levels in our students, and so our voice is already on a different pedestal, if you will. So just to keep that in mind as we move forward. The second thing that I wanted to highlight is that here at World Savvy, we're not experts in equity. We're working really hard to make sure all voices are heard and doing this work in an equitable space, but recognize that we more than welcome and want your conversation and dialogue brought to the forefront, and we'll definitely have space at the end for anything that you may think that we've missed. And we'll mention it is only an hour-long training, and we've definitely missed a lot of ideas in this. So with that, we will jump into our learning targets for today. I will identify the relationship between global competence and equity. I will discuss how implicit bias influences views on K2A projects. I will see the importance of valuing projects with a lens of equity, and I will see the role of a judge as empowering individuals as meaningful, sustainable change makers. This first slide, and those of you that have worked with World Savvy in the past, are probably pretty familiar with our global competence matrix. This slide highlights the behaviors and skills, values, and attitudes that have been defined by both the Asia Society World Savvy and Columbia Teachers College as necessary in order to equip students for global citizenship. So I'm going to give you just a minute to look at a few of those behaviors, skills, and values in more detail. This is also on our website, and you're more than welcome to check out the PDF file on there if it's hard to read from my screen. So students are going through this process of learning these behaviors, skills, building on these values and attitudes, and I've highlighted 4 that we think are really prevalent in not only their projects, but also in the day at the festival. Investigating the world beyond their immediate environment by examining issues of local, global, and cultural significance. Number 2, recognize, understand, and appreciate the perspective and worldviews of others. 3, communicate ideas effectively with diverse audiences by engaging in open, appropriate, and effective interactions across cultures. Take action for collective well-being and sustainable development, both locally and globally. So we also, as we think about students participating in all of these competencies, we also want to make sure we as judges are also participating in these same competencies, and we'll see ourselves, I'm sure, at times, trying to understand others' perspectives and communicating ideas effectively in diverse audiences. So we will be similarly practicing these throughout the day of the festival. We want to quick go around and just share who are you and what brings you to this volunteering opportunity. The who are you is vague on purpose. A lot of this work is around identity and how we bring ourselves into the space and into that festival. So maybe you are a mother, maybe you are an educator, maybe you are a community member. Whatever way you identify, we'd love to hear a little bit about that, and also kind of what brings you to the volunteering opportunity. We'll be nice and short just for the sake of time.
And I'll just say, too, if people don't want to go through unmuting, you can also put your introduction in the chat, and I'll read that out to everyone. So you can either unmute yourself and introduce yourself, or put your introduction in chat, and I'll read those out. Also, for those that just hopped on, the slides are on Erica's name. So if you click on Erica's name at the bottom of your screen, you'll be able to see where we're working at. All right. Does someone want to volunteer to start out with an intro? Okay. I can also go. So my name is Kelsey. I'm a student engagement fellow at World Savvy, and the thing that brings me to this work is that I was a student in World Savvy's programs and attended the festival as a student in middle school and high school. So that's my connection.
Well, I'm Gail Hughes, and I've been attending as a judge for a number of years now, and I find it very exciting and a lot of fun to see the enthusiasm of the students and what a good job they do.
Thank you, Gail. I'll read out a couple of intros in the chat. Daniel says, "Hi, I'm Dan. I'm an engineer at Xcel Energy and a father of two. I volunteered at the festival last year as a facilitator and had a great time." Will says he has a BA in communications and experience as a freelance journalist, being incredibly curious and striving to be of service. Judging for World Savvy excited me. So those are two intros there. We'll open it back up if anyone else wants to.
This is Esther Goldberg Davis. I have heard about the World Savvy Festival for a few years and just really excited to interact with the students and participate in the process.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Marin, and I'm a retired teacher and parent. Excited to be part of World Savvy. I learned about it a few years ago, and yeah, that's it. Very committed to global citizenship.
Thank you. I'll read out a couple more from the chat. Neil is a returning judge from last year and says that it was a great opportunity, said that their day job is a corporate trainer for Bremer Bank. Rachel is an international educator dedicated to fostering curious minds. Rachel has worked with both high schoolers and college students and love their energy and can't wait to see what the World Savvy students come up with.
Hi, I'm Louise, and I am a retired teacher. I was an International Baccalaureate facilitator and coordinator, and so I'm very interested in global competence and students being aware of their competencies. I was invited to be part of World Savvy Volunteer by a friend who's done it in the past. I'm excited about doing it.
Great, thank you. I'll read Christine's intro. Hi, I'm Christine. I'm the Community Service Manager at Baker Daniels. I've heard great things about World Savvy and I'm interested in learning more about your work through this opportunity. So anyone else want to introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm Guff Van Voren. I've worked in the social purpose sector since 2000, and I'm really interested in equity and social justice and learning more about global cultural competency and diversity and inclusion. This is my first year as a judge for World Savvy. I've been trying to coordinate my schedule for this for about the past 5 years, and it's finally working.
Awesome. We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
We'll open it up for any last intros, and then we'll continue. And if folks jump back in and want to put their intro in the chat as they join, I'll read those out too. All right, any last intros? Great.
All right, we will jump right back in then. I'm going to give you just a moment to read this definition of equity. So in the next couple activities and conversations, we're going to talk about justice and fairness, and we're also going to talk about this distribution of resources and bring those particular pieces of this definition to the forefront. So on this first slide, on this slide, I want you to think about what you see when you just look at this picture. Feel free to shout it out or say it in the chat as well.
A man playing a trombone or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Person playing an instrument, someone listening to it, impressionist portrait. I also just want to quick introduce Gary. Gary's judged in the past, retired social studies teacher, and views this from the global view on a returned Peace Corps teacher in Kenya. Thank you, Gary. Welcome.
So another picture that this represents is a picture of a woman, and someone said impressionist photo or portrait, and that is true. And another one was the instrument. And so what this illustrates for us is really the fact that we all look at one thing and see it very differently. And we see it differently based on our lens and our experiences, our background information, and our knowledge. And so to make sure that we're opening up the multiple spaces and of what this could look like, and valuing all the different views with this picture. And it brings me to projects as well, is that we'll look at projects and see projects from different viewpoints and lenses based on where we are and what we bring with us as an experience and knowledge. The next little activity we're going to talk about is a website, and this is kind of we're going to pick this apart and examine it from implicit bias and talk through kind of why this statement we're hoping to push the equity lens on it. So the situation was a website about global warming is more impactful than a rap about global warming. So I want to open this up to conversation. I know it's kind of hard to have a dialogue and a conversation on with all of us here, but on the same hand, I think we can all hear each other's perspectives on these things. So how is implicit bias relevant in this statement, and how does this statement devalue or diminish rap music, and how is this devaluing in terms of equity? If anyone wants to jump in, we'd love to hear.
Okay, I will go ahead and give you my thoughts about it. Implicit bias in this statement seems to be about the difference between a website and a rap. Why would it be said that a website is more impactful if there wasn't some bias towards the rap?
And Esther says in the chat that it assigns a greater value to one form of communication over another. So again, chat or audio comments are great if anyone else has anything to add. Well says someone clearly prefers or had a better experience with a website than rap music. And rap music is about as heterogeneous as country music is. Daniel says that the statement assumes one has access to the internet. Absolutely.
Anything else?
Anyone else? Rachel says, and also they use written word to tell a story.
Absolutely. So I think what all of you said brings about very great points in this statement, and making sure that as we're going through the judge and through the rubric, recognizing when, or being cognizant when we potentially have a bias, or are thinking about how our biases could be represented in this process will be super, super impactful. And it's so wonderful to hear you able to do that already with this one statement, and that this is, yeah.
And Gary also just had a thought on that and said it shouldn't be about devaluing RAP. The issue is how can global warming be brought to the individual, direct or vicarious experience. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, and populations through that RAP as
Yeah.
well versus a website. Absolutely.
Yeah, with the audiences.
So one of our biggest ways that we're recommending and also seeking your expertise is but what we've called just seek to understand. So with students, it's not about the mode of which their action project is being brought to us, whether it's a presentation, a dance, a song, but really it's about the content that's being delivered. And our role as a judge is to seek to understand and ask those questions. Why was a RAP chosen as the mode to deliver that global competence, or why is a website chosen? And so to really dig into the content that students are providing for us is really our goal in today. The second thing that I wanted to just show you real quickly is equality was mentioned in the definition. And if you notice, I want to just give you a minute to look at the left side of the screen is equality and the right side is equity. Does anyone want to talk about what they are observing in this illustration?
Well, I would say that I can really relate as a short person to equity slide there, and wish often that there was more equity in that way.
Mm-hmm.
In the comparison, equality is everybody gets the same thing, and equity, everybody gets what they need.
Thank you.
Yes.
Esther also said, as equity is about providing opportunities that are appropriate to the individual person.
Absolutely. So the resources are delegated differently depending on the needs. And you all hit that right on the head. What we're asking is that we're not lowering standards for certain students, and that we're still keeping a high rigor of what we're doing with projects, but we are being cognizant of the different influences that might influence our students' projects. And with that, we'll want to provide different resources to the students, whether that be questions or whether that be feedback or so forth. And so working with the teachers over the past year, the length of time working on a project is really differentiated. Some teachers went through and worked on the project in 3 weeks. Some have spent 5 months on it. So that is a resource that's really going to impact that time of what a project may look like. The number of students in a class, and if students are receiving that feedback, will also be something that will impact it. The amount of feedback, technology access in and out of school. Some of our schools have one-on-one technologies, computers, and others don't. And so just to even make a website takes different amounts of resources and time for each student. So social connections for interviews, definitely a resource that differed between student groups and schools. Access to time and transportation outside of classroom to do fieldwork, previous experience working in groups, and students' first language, among many other things. So just being cognizant of these ideas, and that when we are judging and providing feedback, they will have a different amount of resources at hand. The last thing that we're going to do real quickly before opening up the floor is just to take a look at this one, C1 is quality on the rubric that you'll be using to judge students on Wednesday. And if you look at quality, I'm going to read it out loud because it's potentially hard for you on your side of the screen, but the beginning is project is unfinished and has significant mistakes and missing elements. 2, developing, project is finished but has several mistakes or missing elements. Accomplished is 3, project is finished and has few mistakes or missing elements. 4, exemplary, project is complete and has no mistakes or missing elements. So when we're thinking about quality, how does quality look different for each of these, or for each of us and categories?
I guess I would add to that question too, how are different ways that each of these categories on the rubric could be interpreted? You know, what is a mistake? What is a missing element? What does complete mean? So how are some different ways we can think about this question and this one part of the rubric? Again, we'll open it to comments if people want to add or put in the chat and I'll read them out. Will says, for exemplary, having neither mistakes nor missing elements does not equal exemplary to me. Completeness is not exemplary to me. I might struggle with this. Thank you, Will. That's a really good way to interrogate this. And this is, a rubric we've had for a while, and internally we're looking at redesigning it for some of those same concerns, right? Like the learning that we're doing with, that students are doing in class, we want to align with this, and so sometimes we'll have to look at our rubric pretty critically and interpret it in the most equitable way we can, knowing that things like rubrics are changeable documents that we're looking to change internally as well. So if anyone has an additional point to that, Will's comment, love to hear that, and I totally hear that.
I think the number few and several regarding the number of mistakes or missing elements is interesting, and how we interpret that as judges could be different for each one of us.
Esther says, more about critical thinking and suggesting solutions versus grammar or spelling. Absolutely. I was thinking about that too.
Which are captured in some of the other elements of the rubric.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
But.
Anyone else have a thought on this? How does quality look different? Will says, as I'd consider accomplished, I would expect the same standard as exemplary. Mm-hmm.
All right, as I mentioned, thank you for sharing those ideas and thinking around quality and how this looks different across these measures. I want to also open it up to a conversation around things that you're still thinking about or things that are not clear. Also, if you have questions regarding any of the videos that you've already watched from online, we're more than welcome, or we're more than willing to have conversations and answer questions about that as well.
I also have a comment I want to read out really quickly on this. We have Ange said it can be really challenging to assess the projects of students whose first language is not English. They may be very prepared but not able to communicate their preparedness. Absolutely. So that's one of the many considerations going into how we consider student projects. Thank you for that, Ange. Will also said, if it is accomplished, it is complete and excellent. Again, I may find this awkward to work with. Definitely. It's messy to grapple with. And again, so this is an open time. If you have any follow-up comments or questions from anything we just discussed or Erica shared, and also for the judge roll the day of, any big questions or down to logistics, this is an open space. You can stay for a few minutes to hear some questions, or if you're ready to go, you can hop off the call as well. But this is going to be a time, we have 3 World Savvy staff on the call if you have any questions. But we'd also just love to hear maybe a final comment from everyone on on these topics and conversations. So if everyone could either unmute or say something in the chat, maybe a final word that you're thinking about from these conversations, or a statement or a question you have coming out of this conversation of global competence and equity and judging. My word, I think, is intergenerational. That's going to be my takeaway word. Rachel says, for people who have judged previously, is it really hard to judge while the students are presenting? I'm a bit nervous about that. I wish we had a few minutes in between each presentation to give feedback. So do any previous judges have anything they want to say about that? I know we have a few of you on the call. Or Mallory, do you have anything you want to say to that question?
Sure. I mean, I think it is a balance, and it can be challenging. What I typically have found in the past judging, while it is pretty jam-packed and there are those 15, we're really specific about the 15 minutes, it's oftentimes easier to sort of judge while they're doing it, so that you're able to sort of be in the moment and hearing from the students and looking through the rubric at the same time and being able to document some of those pieces without having to step back in such a quick space and try to remember everything that you just heard in the last 15 minutes. Oftentimes as well, student projects might not take that full 10 minutes, and so there will be a little bit of time in between projects, and so there is some space for that judging to happen as well. It's really dependent on the student presentations and how long they've prepared. But it is a challenge, but I think it's definitely doable.
Yeah, Mallory, I'd also just add to, thank you for that, that the Q&A time is a good time. If you're judging while the students are presenting and you miss some pieces throughout the rubric, the Q&A time is a good thing to revisit, or a good time to revisit some of that. So if you're, I think I missed when they talked about multiple perspectives, you can follow up on that in the Q&A time as well, which is a good time. We have a couple of comments, and I'm going to read some questions out too. Will says that when they began, they were surprised by how hard-nosed the fellow judges were. All were women. I tend to have daunting standards, so I meet my fellow judges' standards. We have a question of, Will also says, I will need to consider how this rubric will change my skills and bias. Thank you for that. Mary asked, is there more than one judge for each project? Yes, Mary, the goal for especially the competition rooms will be to have 2 judges per room. So that's the goal, depending on registration and how many judges show up. We'll see, but that's the goal. There'll be 2 per room. And there might be other guests in the room too. Their teacher might be in the room. There might be World Savvy staff in the room, but 2 main judges. If you're in the showcase space, we're going to have 1 or 2 judges visit each project. Maybe at the same time, maybe not. But yeah, Gary said, great presentation and discussion. Looking forward to great presentations. Thank you, Gary. Guff asked, how many projects are we judging? That's a great question, Guff. You will be judging between 3 and 5 projects. Each will have about 15 minutes. So depending on registration and how many students are in each room, you'll be doing 3 to 5. Great. Louise says, excited to meet the students, hoping I can finish the judging sheet on time. Great program. Will says, if we have no time to reflect, no time to consider and reflect on what we're judging, then I may not feel comfortable or competent in doing that. I may have to consider stepping away. Will, I'd love to touch base with you after this about that as well. We'll definitely have time in the morning for judges to sit down together and look at the rubric and talk through some of this beforehand. And you'll also have time in the afternoon if you want to revisit any of the scores that you submitted or want to add additional notes or context to the World Savvy team that will be looking at the scores at the end of the day. I can talk to you through some of the times throughout the day that we can make time for that, because I think you're right. So I'll touch base with you afterwards as well. Gary said to answer Rachel, the key is to get very familiar with the rubric so that you can begin to evaluate as they present. Usually uses pencil to mark or star with, then fill it in with ink. Daniel says, excited to see the projects. I think it will be a challenging and rewarding experience, especially in the sense of filtering out my own bias as a technically focused engineer, as well as appreciating and recognizing the various backgrounds and viewpoints of the students bringing to the table. Thank you. Thank you, absolutely. I think that's why this day is so valuable for everyone there, students and volunteers. Guff said, are you teaming up a first-year judge with judges that have done this before? Yes, that's the plan. To balance both judges that were able to attend a training, some won't be able to, and judges that have experience or previous volunteer experience. We definitely plan to do that. Thank you for that question. Can't guarantee it, but that's the plan. Can you email the rubric ahead of time so we can become more familiar with it? Yes. It's available on our website, and I'll also send an email to all judges. Great question.
Any other questions or discussion points? Again, I just want to thank you for engaging in this conversation and this work, and that it's not always easy and comfortable, and it was really productive use of your time and our time, and hopefully will come in helpful when you are judging. So thanks again.
We have one last question too. Guff said, are we judging both in the morning and afternoon projects? So that's a great question. This year, we're only having project presentations in the morning. So as a judge, your role ends after lunch. You're welcome to stick around for the afternoon to be an ops volunteer or see and help out with other parts of the day. But you will be judging just in the morning. And that's going to be the main presentation time when all the students are presenting their work, and that will be when you're judging. So thank you for that question. All right, so thank you, Erica, so much. Yes, thank you. If you want to follow up on any points that we discussed here on a more one-on-one basis, you can follow up by email, can set up a time to talk with you. Also, I'll be sending some of those documents in a follow-up, and we thank you for taking this time. This is a conversation that is just beginning, right? None of us are experts, and we could spend so long talking about this, but I appreciate you all digging in for a little while today. Lest one of us forgets, since everyone loves t-shirts, well, there'll be World Savvy souvenirs. You will all get a World Savvy t-shirt as a volunteer. We'll have World Savvy stickers. There'll be some good stuff that day, but yeah, you'll get a t-shirt on the day to wear as a volunteer with our new logo. Very exciting.
How many judges are there?
How many judges are there? On total, I think we have around 35 plus facilitators who will also be judging in the morning and some staff that will also be helping out with that. That's where we are for now. Great question. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day. Again, follow up if you have any questions, and we'll be following up with materials.